Not having access to prisoners is not unusual, and it's by design. And one of the ways that we do get to hear from them in our culture, in our society, is through their writing, the writings that get sent to us. Now, both of you, Lemon and Jamal, have writing in your lives now as a regular practice. And I wonder if you could just talk to us a little bit about when you started to write and how that connected you to prison, if it did. Jamal, why don't you go first?
Well, I started writing in prison. I served a total of 9.5 years in prison, in city, state, and federal prison. And first started, I think, the way a lot of prisoners started, just trying to write really cool letters, to my girl and to different people, and then had other guys ask me to write letters, and then people would write me back and said, "Oh, well, you should be a writer," and that evolved kind of into poetry, and then plays. When I was in federal prison, there were some dedicated people who came in from St. Mary's College and from the University of Kansas, and the English teachers really encouraged us to write, were hard on us about the writing. I mean, we had one professor who would come in and she would, mark up your papers, and so she was.
I hope that didn't stop you.
It didn't. It actually encouraged us, especially one day when she came in with a copy of the Bible that she had redlined. I mean, God was sitting in the back of the class trembling. I hope Professor Jones doesn't look at my paper. So it taught us craft. It taught us that, we would say, are you as hard on the students who are on the main campus at the University of Kansas? And she would say, no, actually, I'm not. But you guys know that you have to be twice as good to get half as far. And I think we appreciated her instilling the discipline in the craft of writing.
Thanks. Lemon, what was it like for you?
Well, I didn't really write in prison for the first 2 times I was there. I had been to prison in New York City, in Rikers Island. I did a year, and then I spent some time in Columbus, Ohio. And it wasn't until where I had to face, when they came to pick me up, the bounty hunters came to pick me up from New York because I had escaped Ohio. I had left Ohio because I didn't live there. I went out there to just do crime. Sorry. Yeah. It's honest, I was a young man, I didn't know. So I went out there, and then when I was let go in Ohio, I never went back. So they found me in New York, and by the time they found me, I was already a poet and a writer. So I started to write. What I did in prison, though, was I spent a lot of time reading. So when I came out and I started writing, I started writing because someone offered me a job working in the theater troupe because of one poem I wrote. And I guess that was the job I was supposed to have because, unfortunately, society didn't want to give me a job because I had a criminal record.
Can you talk a little bit about what you had access to in terms of reading material in prison?
Oh, I had access not only to just books, I had access to great thinkers. Mm-hmm. I had access to, some of the officers were really strong with me. They liked me. I had a really cool personality, and I kept that in order to ride my bed out. And so people gravitated towards me, and confided in me with a lot of their stories, and a lot of even the officers were in prison themselves. This is where they worked. So I had my share of just inmates. Well, I don't like to say inmates, just people I was incarcerated with, sharing their stories with me, and not everything was so deep and dark. A lot of them were kind of funny. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were really crafty. Some of them would take bars of soap and make amazing sculptures out of it. It was amazing. And then, they will talk to you while they're cutting the soap up, and tell you stories. And you just, for me, I soaked all that up. I'm a kind of sponge artist, I'll soak it all up, and for some reason it comes out later because of my just talent for having a long distance memory. I can remember everything vividly from just my past. So
the Penn Prison Writing Program, we believe in more education for prisoners, not less. But one of the things we'd love to see happen is that people who actually work in correctional facilities would have access to education, that there would almost be like a GI Bill for people who worked in the prison system, because it's a pretty brutal environment to have to show up for every day and earn a paycheck.
Yeah. And what's bred into the prisoners on one side and the guards on the other side is distrust and fear of one another. They don't want the prisoner becoming a larger community. In corrections, they have the 3 C's that's called care, custody, and control. And they say that's what they're there to do. And the idea of access is relative to where you are. Lemon and I were talking about, Rikers Island, where we both spent some time. And there's not a lot there in terms of books and, access to education. But there is, the television room, and there's a lot of sports equipment. In fact, if there's some tension, what they like to do is just kind of come, bring people to the gym or the yard and throw a lot of balls out to play with. And the library is very limited. State prison a little bit more, federal prison a little bit more. But it was interesting, on Rikers Island, people were smuggling books. And when I started doing time as a teenager in the 60s, it was related to my involvement in the Black Panther Party. We had to smuggle books in from court. It was actually easier to smuggle drugs in than it was to get a book. And the big thing was when a guard would hand you a book. There was an officer there named Mr. Arno, who I had a chance to reconnect with on the outside, who would smuggle books and knew that his job was at risk. He might have been better off, bringing in some other contraband.
He's retired by now.
He's retired, and he's a great guy. He actually still works with young people, has the largest collection of black authors outside of the Schomburg Library, and works with young people. And he always says, the reason why I work with young people, my friend Raymond Johnson is in the audience. He knows Mr. Arnold. He always says, I'm training my replacements for people to do the work through education.
We publish a handbook, as you both know, for writers in prison that we send to them for free. And one of the things that we did the last time we revised it was we began to put examples of, different narrative strategies or patterns, or an example of what first-person narrative looks like. Because people were writing us prior and saying, we like what you're suggesting, but we don't have any books to go look at what you're telling us. So we began to put examples in. So this is very helpful. Tell us about what your daily practice is now as a writer.
Well, my daily practice as a writer is I try to get 2-3 hours a day in. It's difficult because I teach screenwriting at Columbia University, where I am chair of the graduate film school. So I spend a lot of time reading students' work and critiquing. So every moment that I can kind of steal the right is a precious moment. And I try to, as a professor of professional practice, to try to practice the craft of writing. Been fortunate over the years to be able to go back and forth between writing plays and screenplays and books. I'm currently working on a book and a screenplay, simultaneously. It keeps you sharp, and then if you're working with young writers, it keeps you honest.
Lemon, what about you?
I think I'm at a different phase in my writing at this point. I'm new to a new phase in my writing. It's like right now I have a play that I'm working on. I just finished one, so I'm working on the next one. And it seems like I like to tell my stories through characters. So I'm always trying to find the right kind of character to tell something that I've been dealing with, or something that I see somebody else dealing with. And this play is called Toast, and it's about the black oral narratives. This is based in the 1920s, and so right now I'm trying to think about what Dolomite's story is going to be and what Shine's story is going to be, and Boo Hill McCoy and all these characters I have from the black oral narratives, and trying to put them in one room together, because they've never been in the same room together. They've been in anthologies together. They've been in people's vocal or like spoken word pieces dating way back to the 20s, but now I'm trying to stick them in one room. So that's what my writing process is like. It's more in my head now. Like, okay, how do I get Shine to shine?
Do you feel like by working on it that you do acquire more skill the longer you stay at it?
I'm skilled, man. I'm skilled. I just believe
I ask you that because that's something, a core belief of our program is that writing is a skill that can be practiced, and we believe very strongly that it leads to other kinds of skill, and not, it can lend skill in an employment situation, it can lend skill in any number of arenas. So that's one of the reasons I'm asking you that, because I do think it is the practice where the skill begins to strengthen.
It's absolutely true that the practice will make you better and leads to other things, and they're translatable skills. to be able to express, feelings and ideas. I want to talk just for a moment, too, about, we've all heard the pen is mightier than the sword. I've seen in prison the ability to writing not only to transform individuals but situations. In maximum security prisons, Leavenworth, San Quentin, Sing Sing, people stand in different areas of the yard. They're called courts for courtyards. And so you'll have different groups that kind of hang out, and no one crosses into anybody else's court without permission. It's a quick way to get killed. And I wrote a play. And the way I wrote the play was that I had done some agitprop kind of guerrilla theater when I was in the Panthers. And I was sitting in the big yard one day, and I had first gotten there to Leavenworth, and there's the Mexican Mafia, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Black Guerrilla Family, guys doing 25, 50, 100 years, life sentences. And an old guy named Mr. Cody came and approached me, and he was a black prisoner who had been in prison for a long time and was from New Orleans and ran a lot of the wars in New Orleans. And he came up and he said, "Hey, young blood, heard you did them plays and things on the outside." I said, "Yes." I wonder how he knew that, because everybody knew the Black Panther stuff. And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Uh-huh," and he just walked away. And I thought maybe I violated the convict code, because the convict code is, don't steal from another convict, don't rat on another convict, do your own
and
time.
don't write plays.
Yeah. The next day he comes back with the two biggest black guys in the joint. I'm reading a book, and all of a sudden the sun eclipsed, and I looked up and there's these big guys. And he said, "Young blood, about them plays." And I said, "Oh boy, here it comes, I'm in trouble." He said, "Why don't you write something for Black History Month?" I done checked it with the warden. So I went to the library. No, he asked me to do a play for Black History Month. So I went to the library. This is how I started writing plays. And I went to the theater section. And there was only one black play. It was A Raisin in the Sun. There were only two black plays in the section, right? The whole theater section. Romeo and Juliet, Raisin in the Sun. And I'm reading this and tears come to my eyes. And not because Lorraine Hansberry's words are just so beautiful, but because there's women characters, Because I'm going to put this play on. I said, "Mr. Cody, this play, the only play I found has women in it." You said, "That's all right. Just look on the yard, pick out 3 or 4 dudes. We'll put a dress on them." I went back to my cell and I started writing. And Mr. Cody gave me my cast. He had aspirations of being a producer. You guessed it. It was the two big black guys struck by death. So we're rehearsing. And as we're rehearsing, into the middle of our rehearsal comes the two leaders of the Mexican Mafia, La M. Now, these guys were already doing life, and they had about 5 more murders since they were in prison. And everybody had the same thought. La M has left their court. Who are they here to kill? Mm-hmm. And I'm rehearsing with these guys, and, we're all trying to, now the guys are into it. Before they were ignoring me. It was like, "Okay, Jamal, I'm into it. Look, I'm a tree. I'm a palm tree." And the guy, Raphael, after about 10 minutes, he jumps up, and he's real upset. And he comes to me. He was like, "Yo, Holmes, can I speak to you a minute?" I was like, "Oh, shit, here he comes." He says, "Yo, man." He says, "I've been sitting here for about 10 minutes. And I've been watching you work, Holmes. There's no secret in the joint. And I'm going to tell you something, man. That guy you're working with, that effing guy, Holmes, he's not feeling his character." So I said, "Why don't you join?" He joined. I had to rewrite the play. The next day, the Aryan Brotherhood sent their lead guy up, right? He comes back to the Aryan Brotherhood court, and they were like Big Red, and Big Red was like a 5th-degree black belt. They said, "What happened? What was the blacks and Mexicans doing?" He was like, "A play?" It was like, "What did you do about it, Red?" He was like, "But they give me a part." So we were the only multicultural group in prison. Guys were writing. They were doing poetry. We had our own courtyard, right? And we kind of changed the energy, and that's what writing can do. It transforms the individual, but it transforms the energy in prison.
I want to ask you both a question about access. I'm thinking about this too because of Ken Hartman, who we heard today, who was not able to phone in. And I'm also asking it because one of the other pieces that was read tonight by a man named Charles Norman, and he wrote the piece about growing flowers on in the yard. And I tried to see him last December. I happened to be driving to Florida, and I was going to pass right by the facility where he was in, and we were giving him a special award for his achievement over a number of years. He's an exceptional writer, and he's been a model prisoner in many ways, and he's done a long, hard sentence. And I had lovely, pen, letterhead, stationery, and I did all the things that you're supposed to do, and got permission part of the way, and then was denied access, and wasn't told in the way that we didn't find out till today that we wouldn't be able to speak to Ken on phone. I couldn't get to see Charlie, and I was calling, I must have made 20 phone calls, from Maryland and Virginia and from North Carolina, South Carolina, all the way down until I was passing Daytona where he is, and I couldn't get in to see him, and then they said, "Oh, we're really sorry, you can't." This inability to access people, did you experience that, and did writing connect you in some way during that? Now, Lemon, I know you weren't writing in prison, but were you writing letters maybe, or?
Well, I wrote when I came back to Ohio. I was already a poet when there was, and during that time there was a benefit by the poetry community in New York to raise money to free me or to raise money for my legal fees, called Lemonade, and they all. So the poetry community got together and raised money to send it to Ohio. So during that time, while I was waiting to hear what my fate was going to be, I was writing. When the bounty hunters came to pick me up and bring me back to Ohio, I was writing. So during that time, I never experienced a visit in prison, unfortunately. I didn't have that luxury. I don't think many of us had that luxury when we were locked up. So writing and reading comes as a way to kind of heal that wound for a lot of us. We use writing and reading. And I say that simultaneously because that's what I did. A lot of us do read and as well as write. But I think that's what causes us to kind of escape the world. And it also brings something different from what the TV is bringing. I mean, I've been in a situation in prison. We've all had these. It's great because we always share these war stories. And I remember there was such a big argument over books. When I was in Rikers Island, people were fighting over books. And there was a fight between two guys over the difference between the word knowledge and wisdom. And they fought each other for that, because one said the knowledge is the same thing as wisdom, and the guy was like, no, and next thing it escalated into a fight. And it was like, wow, that's interesting to start a fight, over words,
Debating society.
But it's just like that's
the
way it is. It's prison is full of life, even though, your life is taken away from you. You'd be surprised how much is going on internally.
It's just so, when I was in prison, America was number 3 in the world in terms of the number of people that was locked up, behind South Africa and the then Soviet Union. Now we're number 1. What's been cut are all the educational programs. I earned 2 college degrees when I was in prison, graduated summa cum laude from the University of Kansas. Nothing on my transcript or on my prison records say that I'm a member of the Alumni Association. It's not like on my diploma my Jayhawk is like behind bars going like peace, And every study shows that the rate of recidivism low is proportionate to the amount of education a man or woman can get behind bars. But all these programs are cut. It's not possible to do what I did and what a few other men did in prison, a few other men and women did in prison in terms of earning degrees and then putting the combination of the formal education and the prison street education to use to make a difference in society. So we are back to the examples of people like Malcolm X, who taught himself to read and write in prison, became a great writer and a great orator, and other people who educate themselves in prison and understand that that is an amazing way to stay connected with your humanity and other people, and then to open your heart and soul. And as the poem that I was privileged to read, open your mouth and the light will come out, a butterfly will come out.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you both for talking to us.